Bonjour, Shulem Deen.
Bonjour. That's one word I know.
Just one word.
I'm learning.
You have to stay more here, so you can learn a lot.
No, all I need to do is I need to take the French edition of my book and my English edition, because I know everything that I wrote. So all I need to do is read the French edition of my book.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'll learn French.
Yeah, you will, and what a French you will learn, because the French edition was really well made. The translation is very, 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 very good.
Well, I'm very glad you say that. I mean, I met the translator and we had many conversations over the phone, and I you know, as far as I could tell, she's just fantastic.
Yeah, she is.
But I can't read the French, so I can't really judge it. But everyone has told me that it's great, so I'm very pleased.
Okay, Shulem Deen.
So you grew up in an Orthodox Jewish community, the Hasidic community. So could you tell us about your experience growing up in that community and the reasons why you left it?
Well, you know, that's a very broad question. Just to narrow it down a little bit, the Hasidic community is one stream within the ultra-Orthodox, which is one stream within the Orthodox. What characterizes the Hasidic community is their rejection of outside culture and their separation from the rest of the world. Not all Orthodox are like that. There are some that are modern Orthodox that go to college and watch TV and get an education, and they can be doctors and lawyers. The ultra-Orthodox, and especially the Hasidic, cut themselves off from the rest of the world because they want to maintain their very particular lifestyle and their very particular culture, and they want to maintain a certain kind of spiritual focus that, according to them, they can only maintain by keeping the outside world out. And so that is one of their highest values. And so life within the Hasidic world can be characterized as one in which there are invisible walls around this community. So the community I was part of was in and around New York City, but we didn't interact with much of what goes on in New York City outside of our little enclaves. And it's kind of astonishing that they're able to maintain that within a place like New York City, where there's so much culture and art and technology and science and all of that. But they are able to maintain it fairly successfully. So that was the world that I grew up in. The process from growing up in that world to leaving is a long story. I mean, it's a book, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, I would say that ultimately I left because that world was too constraining, and I had discovered the outside world. I started slowly. I started listening to the radio. I started reading books. I started reading newspapers. I started to sort of educating myself on my own.
But it was forbidden.
Yes, but I took small steps. Small steps. Each little thing felt like just a small little thing. And ultimately, I realized that I disagree with their worldview, and more importantly, I came to no longer believe in the fundamentals of the faith. I no longer believed in the basic dogmas and the basic beliefs, in the biblical narrative. They accept the biblical narrative as being factual, historical, and I think that's nonsense. And once you start thinking that way, then all of it sort of kind of becomes completely, then all of it becomes shaky. Some people are able to live an Orthodox life even if they don't believe in the fundamentals, because there are other parts that they like. They like the community. They like the close-knit, the sense that you are part of a group that cares for you and that will always be there for you. You're part of a long chain, a long heritage, an old tradition. So even if you don't believe in the fundamentals, there are some people who can do that. But for me, it felt too constricting. And so at some point I began to feel like I need to get out of here. Except that it was a big problem because I had already, I got married when I was very young, when I was 18. And we had children very quickly, and so I had 5 children. And it was also the only part of the world that I really knew how to live in. I didn't know how to live outside of this very particular community. I didn't understand the mores, the values, the etiquette, the ways of dressing, the little things, how people speak to each other, how to behave in a restaurant, how to, little things about how to just be in the world I didn't understand. But most importantly, I was afraid that if I left, I didn't know what was going to happen with me and my family and my children, who were the most important thing to me. And so that was a real period of crisis that I experienced for a long time before I was able to make the decision to say I am going to leave. And I was determined to maintain a relationship with my children that I thought I'd figured out how I was going to do it. I would maintain outward appearances. I would maintain I would maintain religious practice for the sake of my children, but not in such a way that was so constricting by me being part of the community. But in my home, I would, I don't know how familiar you are, but I would keep kosher and observe the Shabbat, and I would take them to the synagogue for them. And for me, I would live my life that I wanted to live. In the end, that didn't, that was unsuccessful, as you know from the book.
Are there any positive aspects you miss from the community, and what were the aspects that were the most difficult for you to live with when you were within the community?
Why doesn't everyone leave? Why would anyone stay? And even more, we see people who join the Hasidic community and the ultra-Orthodox community, and people ask, what's the attraction to anything then? And I think there are 3 major points that are attractive with that world. And the first is that world provides you with meaning in a very defined and concrete way. It tells you what life is about. It tells you how to behave. It tells you why to be a good person and why to not be a bad person. It gives you a grand cosmic scheme of what the world is for, who created it and why it was created, and all of that. The secular world doesn't do such a good job with that, because we struggle, and that's part of life in the secular world. You have to make meaning on your own, and that's one of the things that the Orthodox community is that religious communities can give you, that are very hard to achieve in the secular world. I would say the second thing is that the Hasidic world gives you a structured life in a way that is hard to have in the outside world. It tells you exactly, gives you a system of rules, tells you exactly what to do when you wake up in the morning, what to do in this situation, what to do in that situation, when to get married, who to get married to, how many children to have, and things like that. And I would say the most important thing is that it gives you community. It's very hard to, the secular world struggles with community. Now, in a world where we live individualistic lives, we have almost an epidemic of isolation. People, especially people in large cities, people live very disconnected from other people. You sometimes don't even know your neighbor. And this is something that the religious communities in general, but the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community in particular, and Hasidic communities even more so, they create really close-knit communities where you feel held and embraced, and you feel as if you are part of something greater. You are not alone in the world. And even though there are many people who struggle within the Hasidic community, the community as a whole provides ways to support both individuals and families. Individuals, there's a lot of poverty in the Hasidic community, but individuals and families are provided with support by the community, whether it's from community institutions that are supported by some of the more wealthy members of the community, or by getting government benefits, grants, programs of different sorts that the community is able to get. And so I miss some aspects of community that the Hasidic community provides. And it was certainly a very, very great loss when I lost my faith. And so finding meaning as a secular person is a great and feels like a lifelong project that is never over. But that is what life is like as a secular human being in the modern world. You have to figure it out. You have to figure it out every day, over and over again, to think what is important and what are your values, and how to be in the world, and how to behave, and how to be with others, and how to be a good person, and why to be a good person, and how to exercise that in practical ways.
I believe you see your children 6 times a year. And we feel when reading the book that it's a great pain for you. Have the relationships improved lately? What are your relationships to your family and children now?
So I have 3 girls and 2 boys. The 2 older ones, they were not included in the 6 times a year, and so my youngest daughter, she quickly stopped coming because the agreement was only until they're 13. She turned 13 soon after that, and she stopped coming. And then my boys, my older boy turned 13, and he didn't want to come anymore, and then my younger one decided he doesn't want to come. And so it all ended already a good number of years ago, and I haven't seen them. But even those, there was never 6 times a year. There were always excuses. Oh, we can't do this month, can't do that month. So it ended up being just like, even when I would see the boys, it would just be like 4 times a year. And it was always very, very difficult. And it was not a relationship. It was just like a visit, and then they became sort of like, I'd become a stranger to them. They didn't quite know how to relate to me, because it was so infrequent, and it was difficult for them, and it was very painful for me. But all of that ended already a long time ago, and my 2 daughters got married, and I was not invited to the weddings, and I had nothing to do with them, and I haven't had a relationship with any of the children in a very, very long time. I mean, a proper relationship I haven't had with them since it all disintegrated, as you read at the end of the book, and that was about that was around mid 2008. So it's about 9 years now that I haven't had any sort of real relationship with any of the children, yeah, I haven't seen them in a very long time. I was able to see my oldest daughters, very, very briefly for my second daughter's wedding. I was not invited, but my brother encouraged me to go and just show up, and I showed up, and I wasn't allowed into the wedding hall. There were people there who were saying, no, you can't come in, you can't come in. But in the end, my daughters were told that I was there, and one of my daughters sent me a message. She was already married. My oldest daughter sent me a message through her husband that she wants to see me. And so we met outside of the wedding hall very briefly. I hadn't seen her in 8 years. And we spoke for just 1 minute, and one of the men from inside came out and started screaming at her, "Why are you speaking to him? He's an evil person, he's a bad person, get away from him." And she turned white, and she just turned around and started ran away. And she's a grown woman. She's now 20 years old, and she can make decisions if she wants, but that just shows you how strongly and how powerful the influence of the community and their lifestyle and their worldview is on the individual members. So it's not just that they're children and they can't make their own decisions. Even adults can't make their own decisions because they are under pressure from the community, and that they're given very, very clear instructions on how to live and how to behave and who to associate with. My second daughter came out also just very, very briefly, and I was able to give her a hug. And it lasted about 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and I gave her an envelope of letters that I had sent to her over the years that were returned unopened. So I gave them to her, and I gave her a little wedding gift and envelope, and that was it. And she went back in. So that was very brief. That was about a year ago. But other than that, I haven't had a relationship with them. Yeah, but it's become easier, and this is, you know, as painful as it's been. I did learn something about myself and about my children and about relationships between parents and children, and also about life. And one of the things that I've learned is to be patient, because I know that, you know, human relationships are dynamic. They're not static, always. And regardless of where you are and who might influence you, people change and people think in different ways as they grow, as they mature. There's no doubt in my mind that at some point I will reconnect with my children, at least some of them, in some way, in some form. And I've learned that I can wait for them to feel when the time is right. And that was something that took a long time for me to come to. It took a lot of processing and a lot of just sort of thinking things through, and letting my emotions just simmer until I was able to get some perspective on this. And now I've come to the point where I can wait.
What is your religious stance today, and what do you believe in, basically, and what did life teach you, and what are the foundations on which you want to build?
I'm not a religious person. I'm a secular person. I have no religious orientation. I don't do much by way of religious practices. My girlfriend happens to be a little more religious than I. She's not very religious, but a little bit, and she likes to do certain things. So she observes, you know, Shabbat to a certain degree. I don't know if either of you are Jewish, or if you have any experience.
I have an experience, but I'm not Jewish.
Okay.
But I have a lot of friends who are Jewish.
Okay.
I know very well the community. Right. I am from Morocco, so
there are a lot of Moroccan
yes,
Jews
and I have some good friends of mine, especially of my mother, who are Jewish. She worked with them, and they're like my aunts, so I know Shabbat.
So you know Shabbat, and you know what kosher is.
Yeah.
So my girlfriend observes Shabbat a little bit, you know, not in a very strict way, but she likes to go to the synagogue on Saturday mornings, and she makes kiddush on Friday night, which is a special blessing, special ceremony that you do, and she lights candles and little things, and we keep a kosher home. We don't eat we don't generally cook non-kosher food at home. So I do that because she wants that, and so I accommodate her. But I'm not a religious person. How do you make meaning in life? How do I make meaning in life, having come from a religious world and now being a largely secular person? I find meaning in compassion. I find meaning in. I certainly find meaning in relationships, in human relationships, and in how we enrich our lives through interactions with others, short-term interactions and long-term interactions, and how we can impact other people in positive ways. And I think, to me, that is probably the most important aspect of making meaning in life. It's about how to be with other people, but also it's how to be with yourself. It's how to think about how to find a better place for yourself and how to be in the world. And this is something we all we all think about and we all struggle with, and it's something instinctively. These are the things most people spend so much time, so much of their days, just thinking about. Like, how can I find peace? How can I be, how can I be fully at peace, body, mind, and all that, and and so it's important to figure out what it is we want for ourselves. But I think the things that give me joy in life are literature and music, but most of all, my interactions with others and the way other people affect me and the way I affect other people.
Well, thank you, Shulem.
Sure.
Thank you very much to share with us all these huge and beautiful stories.
Well, and thank you for taking an interest, and thank you for coming over, and for listening.
Thank you so much.